What's up, everyone? Welcome in to the UFC 303 Predictions Podcast. Although it is not the return of Conor McGregor, the UFC did a phenomenal job in getting Jiri versus Alex Pereira, number 2, to headline this card with Ortega versus Diego Lopez as the co-main. Man, I'm really excited for this. Ryan, Zach, Luke, how you fellas doing today?
Doing good. Love talking some fights with you fellas. I'll tell you that much.
Gonna say it better myself. Doing good.
Yep, fired up. Good card. International Fight Week. Let's get it.
Let's get it. But before we dive into UFC 303, we got some fight news to touch on. So, according to Ariel Helwani, he kind of leaked this on his show earlier in the week. It's expected that Holloway versus Topuria will be announced for Utah later this year. But, Zach, I feel like you believe they're targeting the Sphere for this one.
Yeah, I know. Just today, it was like Topuria's like physical therapist or something, I want to say, came out and said that Topuria is in fight camp. And if you do the math on that, I believe that UFC 306 at the Sphere is 12 weeks away, pretty much on the nose. So my guess is UFC 306 is when that's targeted for. The math lines up. I mean, I don't know what Ariel's saying there, but my guess is it's going to be at the Sphere.
Now, there's also rumors that Merab versus O'Malley will be at the Sphere. Do you guys think it's possible they double book 2 title fights for that card? Dana apparently has already poured $14 million worth of resources into this card. Says it's going to be a one and done. We'll see about that. But could they double book and have O'Malley Merab as the co-main?
I think I think they might be triple booking here because apparently it was also said that Grasso Shevchenko, the tough finale, was also supposed to be on that card, which I mean I guess makes sense considering it's Mexican Independence Day. Alexi Grasso's Mexican champion, so maybe we'll see 3 title fights on this one. I don't know.
Yeah, Dana had an interview on a podcast where he talked about how anyone after him at the Sphere is screwed because no one's going to put on a show like he has there. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's 3 title fights for sure.
Damn. Okay, boys. Next. What's next for Bobby Knuckles after his round 1 knockout of Ikram last weekend? Is he lined up for a title fight next? Is he going to wait? Like, is he still in that kind of gatekeeper type of role? It's been a while for him. He's got a title fight. What are you guys' thoughts?
Yeah, I honestly really wanted to see Bobby Knuckles versus Strickland, but I know Strickland's saying, "Oh well, I have to be fighting for the title next because everyone knows I beat Duplessis." So I'm really not too happy about that. I know Ryan, you have a theory on, or you have an idea on what they could do there. I think a lot of it depends on what happens with DDP and Izzy.
Yeah, I'm somewhat blanking on what I said before, but it's like one of those weird things where I think both guys are technically in the right. Whittaker should also be looking for a title fight or at least to fight Strickland for like a number 1 contenders bout. You can't go wrong either way. And then in terms of Strickland's side, I do believe that he got robbed. A lot of other people do believe that he got robbed. And now it's strictly Izzy and Duplessis fighting for the strap in Perth, I want to say. Is that right? Perth?
Yeah,
It you could easily argue that regardless of the winner on that, Strickland does get the next title fight. And you could also argue that Whittaker should be fighting Strickland for the contender. So I mean, regardless of how it goes, I say Duplessis wins, you book that fight Strickland versus Whittaker. And then if Izzy wins, you know that they're just going to be throwing Izzy the immediate rematch with Strickland most likely.
I mean, if Izzy wins, it can make a lot of sense because then you can do Izzy Strickland for that title fight, and then Bobby Knuckles can get his rematch with DDP, which I know he said he wants that, so that can make sense. And then Hamza can just sit in the corner and be the odd man out.
Yeah, I think if Whittaker doesn't want to wait, he could fight Kamzat. That's I think the best path, and I could see them easily rebooking that fight for sooner rather than later because Whittaker took kind of minimal damage in that fight. So I think it's all up in the air, and I think it's all good for that division. I think there's a lot of heavy guys at the top of the division, so I'm excited for that division.
Speaking of Chimaev, he pulled out of another fight here. I believe that was the 5th time he's done that in his UFC career, if I'm not mistaken. What do they do with him? Like, yeah, they could try to rebook against Bobby Knox, but like, he's got that visa problem where I don't think he can fight in the States. Like, it just seems like he's more difficult to book than any fighter in the sport. So, what are you guys' thoughts? What are they going to do with Chimaev?
Yeah, I think
Maybe
it's a weird spot because like I don't know if you guys remember, but like since COVID, he got COVID and trained through COVID and it like hospitalized him. And I think that was one of the first fights he pulled out of. And really since then he's had health problems. So I don't know if that's all like a domino effect from that. I still think he's a big name. I don't know what's up with the visa problems, but I still think like he's still going to get a big fight. They're going to book him. They're not giving up on him yet. He's still, a top tier prospect in that division. So we'll have to wait and see. But I kind of feel bad for the guy. Obviously, as a fan, you want to see him fight, but I'm sure he wants to fight too. This is how we get paid. This is how he makes a living. So
Yeah, I honestly don't even think he deserves the Whittaker fight right now. Maybe they give him someone like Imavov. I think that could be a fun fight. And I know obviously he's not booked. I don't know how much time he's gonna have to take to recover after that Cannonier fight. Maybe they can go in that direction. I'm not really too sure where or when they book him, but I mean he should be ready to go relatively soon, you'd think.
Yeah, I could see that, Zach. I mean, I don't know when the Paris card's coming up, but I'm sure they're probably eyeing to get Imavov on that Paris card, and I could definitely see Hamzat fighting Imavov. I mean, maybe if he can get into the country, like Luke said, like very bad visa problems. It seems like the only two places he can fight right now are Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi, and it's like the same way with Shara Bullet with the eye problems. You'll never see that guy fight in the United States, which does suck because it limits how often he can fight and his potential to move up in the rankings.
I love that you brought Shara Bullet up, Ryan. Where does he go next after his performance? I mean, Bo Nickal called him out. Is that something that us as a crew would like to see?
Honestly, I think Bo ragdoll Shara. We see how many problems are posed by the wrestlers to him. And if Bo can avoid just getting kicked in the head in the first couple minutes, I think he'll take him down and find a submission pretty quickly. As a Bo Nickal fan, personally, I would enjoy to see it because I mean it'll build up his name, get him a lot of recognition. I think it would be a fun matchup to see, and the styles would be kind of crazy. But I do think Bo would take care of him pretty quickly, which is probably why he gave the call out because Shara is a big name.
Yeah, I agree, Zach. And it's just like I said, I guess it just depends on whether or not Bo is willing to travel to either Abu Dhabi or Saudi Arabia at this point to fight, just because Shara cannot fight for any athletic state commission within the 50 states of America and pretty much anywhere in Europe. It's just one of those guys where he's like extremely hard to book, and it's not like and like unlike Chimaev, it's not like he's pulling out of fights. It's just that he does have those medical issues where no, he'll never get sanctioned to fight in the United States. So I could see that fight going down the line. I agree with you. I think Bo Nickal ragdolls him. He's shown tremendous problems with the wrestling, takedown defense, and wrestling in general. I mean, he even had to cheat his way out of a takedown in his last fight. I don't know if you guys saw that fence grab, but definitely should have been a point. I don't know what they were thinking, at least what the ref was thinking, not calling a point on Shara. And it kind of just, I don't know. I hate seeing that because it's like a guy that you're excited for, and then it's just like, damn, he's a cheater.
The thing about Shara too is like while he is a phenomenal striker, you see while he's going against a wrestler, he's almost trigger shy. Like you saw in the first 2 rounds of that last fight, he wasn't able to get his striking going because he just seemed scared of the takedown threats. So I think that is a huge problem for him, and he needs to definitely improve on that going forward.
For
yeah,
those
I
that may
like
not know, can you guys talk about his eye? Like what's going on with the eyeball?
He's just
He,
blind in one eye. It's like a
yeah,
different
he
color.
when he was fighting on the regional scene, I don't know what happened, but he injured his eye. He went, got surgery, didn't fix it, and he ended up ultimately going blind. And I don't know which eye, it's either his right or his left, but one of his eyes he can't see through. And it's just like one of those things where it's everyone knows about it, so he can't be like Bisping and lie on medical tests and just get away with it. But yeah, so he basically, like I think Dana said too, it's like the only places we can book him are in the Middle East.
Luke, let's get your thoughts.
Yeah, I like the Bo Nickal call out. I think we've talked previously about like who's next for Bo Nickal and how they play him right because obviously one of the biggest prospects, one of the best wrestling prospects in UFC history. And I like that call out. I think it's a guy with a name that we've kind of been waiting for. So I would love to see that down the line. I think Bo's starting to get a little restless. which I'm kind of enjoying because I think one of our biggest takeaways against Bo, very few takeaways against him, is that he's not as active as we'd like him to be. So I think that's a good one down the line. And it's a striker that our biggest thing has always been, how will Bo handle the strikers, the legit strikers? So I think I like that fight. We'll see, obviously, with all the issues surrounding getting that fight booked, but I would like to see that fight for sure.
All right, gentlemen, let's finally move on to UFC 303. Starting us off on the early prelims, Ricky Simon, a minus 225 favorite versus Vinicius Oliveira, plus 185. Simon is 9-4 in the UFC. He has lost 2 in a row, though, to Mario Bautista and Song Yadong. He did beat Murad back in 2018, has a win over Jack Shore and a win over Brian Keller, while Oliveira is 2-0 in the UFC with 2 knockout wins, the last one via a flying knee. Zach, we'll start with you. Who are you going with here, Simon or Oliveira?
Yeah, I like Simon. I think this fight in general is a great way to open the card, get the fans excited, but it is a massive step up in competition for Oliveira. And regardless of Simon's recent losing streak, he has fought top-notch competition, like you mentioned, Colin. And while Oliveira is dangerous, I expect Simon to navigate around that. I have him winning by UD.
Yeah, I think Simone's grappling and just overall wrestling advantage is going to be the biggest factor in this one. Oliveira got controlled for probably about like a round and a half in his fight against Bernardo Sopage, and Sopage took that fight on short notice, and it wasn't until like the very end of round 3 when you could clearly see Sopage was gassed, just like doing whatever he could to try to stay in the fight. He was backing up, and then ultimately Oliveira was able to land that vicious flying knee. I don't think that Simone on a full camp or Simon on a full camp is gonna gas out, let off the brakes at all. And I see him just ultimately getting like a 30-27 unanimous decision, maybe a sub in there if he wears out Oliveira enough. But I just think the grappling factor is going to be the biggest part in this one.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ryan. I think we're at kind of at the point last prediction pod we did with like kind of a Kevin Holland. Not that comparing Ricky to Kevin Holland, but it's at the same point where like guys who fight the top of the competition and then go on a little bit of losing skid, and then they give someone that they kind of think that he's going to win. I feel like this is the same position. I just against an up and coming guy, like you don't really see Ricky Simon lose fights to up and coming guys. He's been at the top of the heap with the best, has beaten some of the best. So I think Ricky Simon wins this. I think it hopefully starts our betting day off right. So I'm on Ricky Simon here.
Make that a clean sweep. I'm also on Ricky Simon. I could not have said it any better myself, gentlemen. All right, Reia Tsuruya, minus 550 versus Carlos Hernandez at plus 375. Reia is 3-0 in the UFC, wins via knockout, UD, and a Kimura. So a well-rounded game, it seems, while Hernandez is 3-2 in the UFC, coming off a knockout loss. Zach, are you going with the underdog here, Carlos Hernandez?
Yeah, I mean, Hernandez is definitely a lot more battle tested, and I don't think these odds should be so widespread. I mean, I still think Tsuruya gets the job done, but I think a part of the reason why I'm saying that might be just because the odds they opened as wide as they did, so that kind of is influencing me. So, like, yeah, I'll go with Tsuruya to get the job done. I don't know how, but I don't think these odds should be as widespread as they are by any means.
Yeah, Zach, I do have to agree with you, and I hate to say, because you boys know I love my rising prospects coming from Japan. But when I saw the odds in this fight and I saw like this fight was on the card, I figured it'd be like Tsuruya maybe edge him out like minus 150, minus 180 around there, or it would be a pick 'em. Uh, like you said, Carlos Hernandez is much more battle tested in the UFC, has had some wicked finishes in the UFC. Um, and then it's like some of those road to UFC winners kind of scare me in a sense, just because you saw with like NHL Jubilee, he looked great going into road to UFC, won the entire thing, and then fights in Abu Dhabi against a can Mike Breeden, who's been cut from the UFC at this point, and gets knocked out in the 3rd round. So like it seems like a lot of these guys coming out of the road to UFC, besides like Tatsuro Toya and Renya Nakamura, have just been like fraud checked in a sense. Is once they face that higher level of competition, it's just like there's obviously a noticeable gap in skill. I think Tsuruya is a bit of level above that, especially at flyweight, which needs some fresh blood, and I think ultimately he gets the job done.
Yeah, I agree. I think Hernandez's only path to victory here would be on the ground. And like you said, Tsuruya is kind of a well-rounded fighter. He's got finishes both, through punching and kicking. knockouts and submissions. So I just kind of don't see him losing this fight, especially kind of, being a highly touted prospect, undefeated. Like normally when the line's this big, they're normally right. So I think if you're going to bet this fight, you're going to bet Tsuruya. I'm on Tsuruya.
Yeah, I think this could be a nice little parlay booster for everyone out there. Next, Andre Arlovski plus 220 versus Martin Buday at minus 270. Arlovski actually debuted on November 17th, 2000. So he's had quite a bit of time in the UFC, but is currently on a 3-fight losing streak. Not a good stat for someone in their 40s. While Buday is 5-1 in the UFC and he's coming off his first loss, which was via KO. So it'll be interesting to see how Buday bounces back. Zach, are you going with the old head here? I can't see you taking him.
Yeah, dude, Jesus, Andre Arlovski is old. But, I mean, if you can get away with it at any weight, it would be heavyweight. The only thing I'm a little worried about as far as Buday goes is him maybe being a little shy after Giziev absolutely had his way with him their last fight. So, I mean, I want to see how he rebounds. But he is given a very winnable matchup here, and I do think he wins the fight via decision.
Yeah, I think age will play the biggest factor in this one. I mean, Arlovski, credit to him, staying in the game for as long as he has. What's that? You said 2000, Tom?
2000.
Yeah, so 24 years in the UFC. I mean, I can't be, overstated enough. That's ridiculous. And I don't know. It's just like one of those things. I ultimately, I think Buday gets it done inside the distance, probably second or third round KO, just wears him out a little bit. The age always comes into a factor, especially with cardio, and especially because these guys are fighting at heavyweight. But I guess what scares me is the Shamil fight that he lost. Definitely not a good look on the resume, considering we saw them get booked up with the Rosenstrick and pretty much die on the stool. So not a great loss to have on your record, especially at the heavyweight division. But give me Buday.
Yeah, I'm rocking with you guys. I think, once you get past 40, the chin starts to go a little bit, especially at heavyweight. I don't see Buday losing this. He does have some good wins. He did beat Barnett back in 2022. So I don't know. I just can't, like you guys said, I can't side with a guy who's 45. Interesting thing though on Tapology, Arlovski has just under $6 million earned from the UFC, which is just like a crazy thing to think about for a guy who's like never competed, for a title and never got like pay-per-view points. It's a lot of money.
Man.
This
guy's Dr. Arlovski. He used to be a heavyweight champ.
He was a UFC champ?
He was a UFC champ.
What?
Arlovski held the belt for one fight in like 2002. Yeah.
How do you know that, Ryan?
It is one of those things. I heard it once and was like, no fucking shot. And now it's just a fun fact.
There ain't no way this dude won a title.
I'm like 95% sure that Arlovski.
I'm not seeing that on Tapology. You could be right, but
someone pull up UFC stats.
I'm just gonna get a list of UFC heavyweight champions.
That works as well. That would get the job done.
Am I gonna get fraud checked? This is horrible.
Oh, you can't get fraud checked because we thought that was so funny.
I think it's a decent thing to be fact checked and be wrong about because we were 2 years old when he had the title. So
That's a good
yeah,
point.
he held the Fury belt. Or no, he did. He had the UFC belt back. Yeah, he won it on UFC 51.
Yep, he beat Tim Sylvia in the first round to claim the interim title, which was later upgraded to the full champion title.
Oh wow!
He defended the title twice against Justin Ehlers and Paul Bentello, and then Tim Sylvia beat him when they fought again. Yes.
So it was all interim. He lost the heavyweight.
No, he defended the belt twice. Whoever was the champion at the time vacated, and then he defended the belt twice.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting.
Because it does say on Tapology that he defended the interim champion belt twice and then lost to Tim Sylvia for the UFC championship belt. So yeah, we're gonna have to give Tapology a little email after this.
Yeah. UFC gotta fact check them.
Otherwise,
Ryan ain't getting fact checked. Tapology's getting fact checked. But yeah, I'm in agreement with all you guys here. This is actually the pick I'm most confident on this entire card is Buday. I think he knocks him out in the second round. Makes quick work of the old head. I mean, you don't want to root for someone's retirement, but at 45 years old, it's almost time to hang up the gloves. But
yeah, like we just found out, he's made his money too. So I mean, you can't do too bad for the guy.
He's made his money.
It's family. All right, guys, let's move on. Michelle Waterson-Gomez plus 164 versus Gillian Robertson at minus 198. Gomez is 8-8 in the UFC. and currently on a 4-fight losing streak. However, that includes loss to Marina Rodriguez and twice to Amanda Lemos. Her last 3 losses, she did get finished, but it is some good competition there for Gomez, looking to get back in the win column with this one against Robertson, who's 10-7 in the UFC, and her last 4 wins, all by finish. Do you guys think this goes the distance? I know we usually are like, okay, take the over in rounds here, but last 4 wins, all by finish for Robertson. Last 3 losses for Gomez, she got finished. Is this one going to go the distance? And who do you guys got?
No, I don't think it goes the distance here. Robertson just being 9 years younger and being the bigger fighter and having a dangerous submission game, I do think she ends up finding a side, and I have Robertson via submission.
Yeah, I think the grappling and wrestling factor, or the edge in that, is going to be the biggest part here. Maybe 30-27 Robertson, and maybe she could find a sub. It's one of those ones, especially with like female MMA. It's hard to predict finishes in a sense. It's like you get people, and it's just like I don't know how to phrase this.
It's certainly more
nicely.
rare. Certainly more rare.
But I think if Gillian Robertson sticks to the game plan, grapples her, maybe wears her out, she'll find a sub in rounds like later 2, early 3. But like I said, ever since that UFC Atlantic City card, watching Erin Blanchfield pretty much not shoot a takedown in her easiest path to victory, women's MMA scares me. So
Yeah, I'm on Robertson. I'm a fan of Gillian Robertson. I don't know if you guys caught the Rogan podcast he had her on. It was pretty good. I enjoyed it. Not a lot of times does he have, women's fighters on, and I think it's cool getting like their perspective being in the sport too. Her coach is Dean Thomas, who I don't know if you watch UFC, you hear him because he's like kind of like the sideline commentator. But he's great too. So I just think that she's well coached, and like you said, like with the Blanchfield fight, not shooting a takedown against a striker kind of pissed me off having money on Blanchfield and her being a Jersey girl. But I think Dean Thomas is a good enough coach to, get a good game plan here. I see Robertson choking her out at some point in this fight.
Yeah, make that another clean sweep, guys. I'm on Robertson in this one. I think she makes easy work of Gomez. Even if she does not get the finish, I think it's a pretty convincing 30-27 on the scorecards. All right. Payton Talbott, the biggest favorite on this card at minus 1,600. My goodness, that's a Bo Nickal line. Versus Yanis. Ryan, help me out with this one. Ghemouri?
I think so.
Yeah, that's a tough.
About right.
It's a tough one, man. There's a reason he's plus 900. Talbott is 3-0 in the UFC, wins via knockout, a rear naked choke, and a UD, while Ghemouri is 0-1 in the UFC with a loss by a knockout via a kick to William Gomes. Guys, I can't think anyone's going to go with a plus 900 dog here, right?
No, I'm very excited to see Talbot back in the octagon. I mean, he's a very exciting prospect to watch. I think he's set up here with another very easily winnable matchup to help build up his name. His hands are electric, but it would be really funny to see Ghemouri pull off the win after Talbot had that video of him being like, here's how you can beat me, kick the legs. But I do think Talbot gets a job done via KO, TKO, but I would not bet it round 1. I actually saw a stat before this that Talbot has not won a fight under 1 round. So I would, that kind of scares me from going like round 1 knockout, but I think round 2 or 3, he puts him away.
Yeah, I agree with you, Zach. Especially when you watch Talbot fight, he's like a very calm, patient fighter. You saw it in the Cameron Simon fight. He really picks his shots. Like high intelligence. It's like a pretty high IQ. He just goes in there. He's not looking for the finish right away. He kind of wears you out, gets off clean strikes. And do I think he should be the biggest? Like this is like one of the biggest line discrepancies I think I've ever seen in the UFC. I know right now FanDuel has him as minus 2,500, which to me is just crazy because like I get right that Payton Talbot's like a big name or like a big rising prospect, but like I associate those lines with Bo Nickal, like you know what I mean, like the guys like Bo Nickal, Hamzat, and I just don't know if he's like on that level of fighter. He's like that level of fighter. But pretty much, yeah, give me Payton Talbot, rounds 2 or 3 KO.
Yeah, I think Talbot's last fight against Cameron Simon, I was a fan of Cameron Simon. I thought he was good. I forget what fight he had prior. Let me just check.
So, right,
the Yeah, he lost that one, but the Terrence Mitchell one on the Volk card against Yair Rodriguez, I thought he looked great in that fight. Obviously a step up with Talbot. But I just think Talbot kind of like made it seem like they're on two different worlds in terms of MMA, and I kind of feel like this is a step down in competition for Talbot. And I kind of feel like he put himself as like, hey, now I'm one of the biggest prospects in the game, definitely at bantamweight. They're building his stock like we see him do all the time. It's entertainment business at the end of the day. So there's easy path to victory here. I think he KOs him in the second round. We'll get into that later when we put up some of our bets in, but yeah, Talbot's going to win this one.
Yeah, Zach, I like that you brought that up, that he hasn't had a finish in the first round, because via the UFC website it was minus 1600. Ryan, you mentioned it's all the way up to minus 25 now. And, some people will see that and be like, oh, he's that big of a favorite. Like, I'm going to just take him round one knockout just to try to, just to get in the parlay. And you're like, oh, well, he's definitely going to win. So that's a good point that, he does not finish guys in the first round. He likes to feel them out a little bit, but yeah, ultimately Talbot's going to get it done. I just can't go against the minus 1600. Like the last time I remember a favorite that wasn't even on this level, but I believe Amanda Nunes was like minus 1,000 when she lost. And I believe we were at school then and we were shocked. We were like, oh my God, I can't believe she just lost to Juliana Pena as a minus 1,000 favorite. It's just so rare. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're really ballsy, go for it with Yanis, but that's not my cup of tea.
Wait, before you go on, did you guys see the Twitter exchange between Sean Strickland and Talbot? Because it was pretty funny.
No, I didn't.
Strickland just tweets. He was like, "God, this guy Talbot's gayer than the gay flag emoji." And Talbot responds. He was like, "Oh God, I can't win, huh?" And I was like, "Yeah, it was pretty funny." Strickland giving him hate, but I mean, that guy goes after everyone.
Dude, Strickland's Twitter is just so out of pocket.
Dude, it was ridiculous.
You go through, if you want to have a good time, just scroll through Sean Strickland Twitter. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, if you're ever bored at work, just give yourself a little bit of a laugh. All right. Charles Jourdain, minus 130 versus Gene Silva, plus 110. Jourdain is 6-1 in the UFC, coming off a loss to Sean Woodson by splits. Silva 2-0 in the UFC, coming off a knockout win versus Weston Wilson. Gentlemen, this is the closest we've gotten to a pick'em thus far. Which side are you guys leaning?
I actually saw a stat when I was researching this fight, and like there are significant strikes thrown, percent landed, there are significant strikes absorbed, and significant strikes defended. We're all basically completely even, which is kind of crazy. But Jourdain just being more battle tested and being the taller fighter, I think he will be able to dictate the fight a little bit more. I have him squeaking out a split decision.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with you there, Zach. I have Jourdain winning this by UD. I think just overall Jourdain's a more well-rounded fighter. He has wins in all categories: submission, knockout. He's an exciting fighter. It's a shame because it seems like he builds like a name for himself. He gets this hype, and then he gets matched with someone like Sean Woodson, who's just a freak for the division, standing at 6-1 with like ridiculous reach. So I can't knock him for losing that fight just because that's just like a crazy task to handle, especially at the featherweight division. If you want a guy, I think that can get it done in all three categories, you go Charles Jourdain. If not, Gene Silva might squeak it out by a split, but I'm pretty confident in Charles Jourdain getting this one done.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you guys there. I think kind of for me, where I thought Jourdain kind of could have a path was when we were at the Kron Gracie fight. What was that? I don't even know what UFC event that was. 288 for Cejudo Sterling. And we were there, and I think we all had money on Kron Gracie with the comeback, the Gracie family, and Jourdain kind of like neutralized him in every way possible. Obviously, Kron Gracie, we don't know how committed he was to that fight, but I think it's like you guys said, it's just battle tested. A guy who's been in the UFC versus a guy who's one win in the UFC. You're normally, when it's a pick'em, you're going to side with the guy who's fought the best of the best in the world in the UFC. And I don't know if you guys watched The Boys on Amazon Prime, but Charles Jourdain looks very similar to the guy Frenchie in the show. I'm just like looking at his picture on the UFC website, and I just can't like not picture Frenchie right now. But yeah, I definitely think Jourdain gets this done. I think it goes to decision. I don't think he's going to finish this guy, but you never know. I definitely think he squeaks out. I think it's going to be UD.
Yeah, I mean, Jourdain has finished 5 fights via submission. You guys touched on it. He's certainly the more experienced fighter here. He does start slow, so I wouldn't anticipate an early finish. I think if he does get a finish, it'll be in round 3 via sub. But I'm not confident enough to take him by method. So if I were to take this one, I would just go Jourdain with the money line.
Yeah, to
All right.
mention it is a pick 'em fight too, so you can't go wrong. I think.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, guys. Cub Swanson is back. Plus 160 versus Andre Fili at minus 192. Swanson, 19-12 in the UFC, has actually won 4 of his last 6, which is uncommon for someone his age. While Fili's 11-10 in the UFC, lost his last fight to Dan Ige by knockout, not a good one. Has lost 3 of his last 5. So kind of trending in opposite directions here. But Swanson is the underdog at plus 160. Do you guys believe in 40-year-old Cub Swanson?
No, I have Fili winning it, but I mean, Cub being 40 years old kind of scares me away. But I am a little worried about Fili's chin after that brutal Dan Ige knockout. But I know, Luke, you were talking about like you're like, I don't think there's really too much to worry about with Cub as far as like a knockout goes. And I mean, Fili, I think he'll be able to control the fight. He's a better wrestler and he's much bigger and longer. So I have him coasting this one out to a UD.
Yeah, Zach, I agree, and I think I forget. Yeah, Cub Swансon's last opponent was like Hakeem Dawodu. I thought that Dawodu got robbed pretty badly in that one. I think even Cub was surprised that his hand got raised for that decision. But yeah, age plays a factor in this decision for me. I think at 40, especially at like the lighter weight classes, like we said earlier, Arlovski, you can get away with it at heavyweight, but with these lighter weight classes and the younger guys, I don't see him pulling this off.
Yeah, I'm right on board with you guys. I'm a fan of Andre Fili. I think he's kind of got a good personality for quote unquote a journeyman in the UFC at this point of his career. I just think, yeah, Cub doesn't really, to me, seem to possess the power to like go out there and like completely clean Fili's clock and get the fight like done that quick. Obviously, he took that huge knockout in his last fight to Dan Ige, but I don't know. I'm looking at like Cub's recent losses, like lost to leg kicks 2 fights ago to Jonathan Martinez, who's great, but also like leg kicks. We don't see a lot of guys lose to leg kicks. That's partially, I think, due to his agent saying like, I don't want to be in here anymore. Before that, he got dropped by Gigi Chikadayes. That's how you say it, right?
Yeah,
some whatever, but he got body kicked to ground and pound, so he went down after a body kick. I don't know. I think when you get up there in age and you're getting paid to do what you love, but once you start getting hit in the face and as the rounds get later, you kind of have that like, what am I doing here? And I think that kind of shown as Cub Swanson's over his last couple of fights. And I think Andre Fili got a little bit of popularity after he had that whole interview and he's like, oh, I just love motorcycles and big booty Latinas. And I don't know. I kind of want to see him win. I like Fili. He had a good fight with Max Holloway back in the day, who obviously is my GOAT. So
yeah,
I'm
that's
going
where you get your respect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
with him, I'm gonna root for you.
All right. Well, this is our first disagreement of the night. I'm going Cub Swanson, baby. Might be going with my heart a little bit here. And you guys made some great points. Yeah, Fili's certainly better grappling. Cub has kind of hinted at retirement. So this could be his last fight, but I don't know. I think he's cleaner in the feet. I don't think he has the knockout power, but I think he's going to have enough volume here that he's going to somehow pull out a split decision. It's my hunch.
Yeah. I feel like if it was 5 or 4 fights earlier in Fili's career, I'm definitely kind of riding with Swanson. Even if Swanson's the same age, I think Fili's just now kind of at that level where like he's a vet. He's not going to walk into anything stupid. I don't see Cub like catching him with something crazy here. So that's kind of where I'm at. But I respect that pick. I think the line's pretty close too.
Yeah, it is a close line. It is a close line. All right, guys. Joe Pyfer minus 265 versus Marc-Andre Barriault at plus 215. Pyfer is 4-2 in the UFC, coming off a UD loss to Jack Hermanson, while Barriault is 5-6 in the UFC, coming off a split decision loss to Chris Curtis. This line minus 265 for Pyfer, I kind of like it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, Pyfer's looking to get his hype train back on track after that loss to Hermanson, and I think he does have a winnable matchup here. And I don't think Marc-Andre is he's a slouch by any chance. I mean, he's fought some tough guys as of late. I do think that Pyfer's power will prove to be too much, and I think Pyfer will get a finish.
Yeah, I think it's like one of those things I know I've said it before on this podcast where you have a guy who's like building a name for himself and sort of just gets like the word like fraud check gets thrown out where he fights a steeper level of competition. And I think like that loss to Hermansson's more of a learning experience for Joe Pyfer more than anything. It's like, all right, dial it back, rework the game plan, and just come out better on the other side. I feel like a lot of fighters do that, and I think Joe Pyfer will get this one done by KO, probably rounds 2 or 3. Especially because Marc-Andre Barriault is the type of fighter that likes to stand in the pocket and trade with guys. That's what he did with Chris Curtis. It's what he's done in many of his fights. And with a guy who has power like Joe Pyfer, you can't do that. But that's been Marc-Andre Barriault's game plan for a majority of his fights, and I think that in the end, it's going to cost him.
Yeah, Ryan, I couldn't agree more. I think Joe Pyfer has like a huge following now with the whole story where like Dana practically like gave him a place to live. And I think that the last fight was a huge learning experience. And if you really like line them up head to head, Marc-Andre's last fight, Chris Curtis, very good competition. But then Jack Hermansson's 6 spots above him in the rankings. Better competition on Joe Pyfer's end. Takes him, loses UD. But that's what you said, a learning experience. I think exactly what you said. They're going to stand, they're going to bang, and I think Pyfer's just got a little bit more lightning in his hand, man. I think he's going to finish this fight.
And circling back, Luke, I know Hermansson actually beat Chris Curtis not too long ago too. Just like talking
Yeah.
about the levels of competition, and like back to the learning experience thing. I mean, Pyfer, he is gassed out. He won the early rounds against Hermansson. So assuming that he worked on his cardio there and it was a learning curve, I think he'll have an improved gas tank and he'll be fine in this fight.
Yeah, and Hermansson's not a guy that like Chris Curtis that's going to stand and play the game that you want to play. He switches it up. He's good on the ground. So I don't know. I don't see Pyfer dropping 2 in a row. That's really my biggest thing, and I think he's right on the edge. You could say of being in the rankings. Tapology's got him ranked at the 21st middleweight right now, or 19th. So I feel like he's one away, and that's always another added motivation to a guy if you're going to get in the rankings or possibly get in the rankings after a win.
Another clean sweep, boys. Pyfer, I think it's a good matchup for him. I think this should be an exciting fight as well. Hopefully, we get a finish in this one. All right, gentlemen, it's time for the main card. Ian Machado Gary -140 versus Michael Venom Page at +120. Gary undefeated at 7-0 in the UFC. Obviously, his last 2 wins versus Jeff Neal Magny were both by decision, although he got the job done. Not really the hype that a lot of people anticipated with Gary after those fights. And it was a controversial kind of fight with Neil Magny in the last one. MVP, 1-0 in UFC, obviously beat Kevin Holland by UD, and it was an impressive showing in his UFC debut. I think we're going to be split on this one, boys. Who's going Ian Machado Gary? Anyone? He's become kind of he was a fan favorite. Now he's kind of seems like the complete opposite.
Yeah, this fight kind of has the potential to be, it could be a really cool fight, but it also could be an absolute snooze fest with 2 counter strikers. Gary's path to victory, if he's able to just snap his leg kick, snap his jab, and just outstrike his way slowly. He also should hold a wrestling advantage as well. But I think the matchup kind of favors Michael Venom Page a little bit. I think you'll have to play MVP's game with the counter striking. And this was my toughest fight to pick on the card, but I know when this fight initially got announced, we were talking about it on this podcast, and I went with Gary. So therefore, I'm going to stick with Ian Gary, but I have it being a split decision. But I could see this one going either way.
Yeah, I have MVP win this one by decision. Maybe unanimous, maybe split. You can never call those things until you actually watch the fight. I feel like I do think it's going to be close. It's just whatever the judges are feeling. I guess what it comes down to is I was watching back that Song Kanon fight with Ian Gary, and Song Kanon was able to drop Ian Gary with that left hook. And credit to Ian Gary, he's a very intelligent fighter. He made his reads in that fight. He's able to pick up on things in fights and just make adjustments. It's what led him to get that KO against Daniel Rodriguez. But I think that point style karate stance fighting poses this really tricky thing, especially for strikers to deal with that aren't really used to seeing guys in the octagon do that. And besides Stephen Thompson, MVP is the best at doing that, just standing, bouncing around at a distance, picking shots at range, blitzing. It's all very calculated. And I think that MVP is just going to have the bigger moments in the striking in this fight, which will give him a decision win.
Yeah, I'm with you, Ryan. I'm on MVP here. I think Ian Gary's great, obviously being one of the top ranked guys in the world. I think a lot of the guys he has fought, though, are very technical and they fight one type of way the whole time. Other than Stephen Thompson and maybe even Kevin Holland, you never really know what you're going to get with MVP. I mean, I think majority of us were on Kevin Holland that last fight, and MVP came in and he dominated that fight, and I think that's why I'm leaning towards MVP. Is if he were to like keep Kevin Holland at such like a he didn't know what was coming next. I can't see him not doing that to Ian Gary. I don't think he'll be able to get him down and win rounds because every round starts in the feet, and I think MVP has been around the block enough that he'll be able to stop the takedowns. And I just think that he's going to be throwing some crazy stuff. He's going to be able to defend the leg kicks, and hopefully, if they don't get really locked up too much, that's why I think Gary could get in the clinch and win some rounds and win some points by the judges through that and on the ground. But I just think when they're standing, when they're at distance, there's no way Gary's going to be at the same level as MVP. And I also think like right after this fight, I think MVP mentioned that he wanted Gary because he didn't want to fight Wonder Boy. That's his boy. And Gary was like, "Oh, I don't fight guys lower in the rankings. Like the UFC is not. I'm not doing that." And he's doing that. Like at the end of the day, Ian Gary is not Conor McGregor. He's not Sean O'Malley. He doesn't have the kind of pull in the UFC that he claims that he has. And I just think that's kind of like that's got to hurt your ego just off of that. So I don't know. I don't think he's as confident about this fight as he has been for previous opponents. And I think MVP's just at the point like he doesn't care. He's done just about everything you could do in MMA. Obviously not in the UFC, but I don't know. I think MVP is not going to knock him out, but I think he glides to a UD decision win here.
I just got one question for the fellas before we get to you, Tong. MVP ranked number 14 in welterweight, Ian Gary ranked number 7. Obviously, MVP's name carries a lot of hype in the welterweight division and in MMA in general. With a win over Ian Gary on Saturday, what do you see like in terms of propelling him to a title shot, especially with guys like Jack Maddalena and Shavkat? It's you know, I mean, if he does end up pulling this off and getting the win, you have another new contender who's just right there for the belt, especially with his star power and popularity. Like, what do you think the UFC does with him?
I mean, MVP is aging too, so I think they'll kind of have to move on that a little fast. So I think you give him this Gary fight, and then you can throw him up for almost. I don't know if they'll get a title eliminator right after, but it'd kind of be on that path, is what I think.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I could see him fighting a guy like Kamaru Usman going up and, both older guys, both maybe one time they're going to be able to fight for a title. And then if you're not jumping that high up in the rankings, you go Jack Della Maddalena. I think that those styles match up well. And I think that's a huge prove-it fight for a young guy versus an old guy. But yeah, you see the top 4 guys, other than Shavkat, who I definitely think deserves a title shot coming up soon after the Bilal fight, probably. They've all been beaten by Leon Edwards. So I think they definitely fast-tracked that. And I think it sells a lot of pay-per-views, that title fight.
Yeah, this is certainly the stiffest competition that Gary's had to fight yet. I'm a fan of MVP. I like his style. I like the build up to this fight a lot. You mentioned it, Luke. Ian Gary trying to call a shot, and Uncle Dana and Hunter were like, "Well, here comes MVP." Where you know what I mean? Like just because he's ranked 14th because he had one fight in the UFC and he came over, like he would be ranked much higher. I actually wish Drock was here because this is a Drock's lock slam it. I think the fight is absolutely going to go the distance. I think they're going to trade shots. I think they're going to be a little bit more tentative than usual, just given their styles. And MVP has only been finished once in 24 fights. And Ian Gary went to decision with Jeff Neal Magny. I think this is a tougher test for him. I do think Ian Gary gets the win, perhaps another controversial decision, but I don't know. This is one I'm really excited to root for. Might be I don't know. The co-main and the main event, obviously. But outside of those two, this is the fight I'm most looking forward to. But I do think Ian Gary gets it done. So we're split on that one, 2-2, boys. So when we talk about this on Sunday, we'll see who was right. All right, oh my goodness, Myra Bueno Silva -205 versus Macy Chiasson at +170. Silva is 6-3-1 in the UFC, lost by UD to Raquel Pennington for the vacant title back in January, while Chiasson is 7-3 in the UFC. Also lost to Raquel Pennington back in 2021 via guillotine, but coming off a win. So, guys, do we like Silva at -205?
Yeah, I know Chiasson does have a pretty massive reach advantage. I don't have it written down, but I think it's like 5.5 inches or something like that. But I think Bueno Silva will try to make the fight a little bit dirty, get in the pocket. She has a good submission game as well. So I can see her getting the fight down on the ground, and I have Bueno Silva via submission.
I disagree here. I just have this strange feeling in my gut that what's her name, Macy Chiasson, just gets this one done. I think that she gets this one done. I wasn't particularly impressed with the Raquel Pennington Bueno Silva title fight. It was like very clear to see, especially, I mean, even though it was 5 rounds and this is only going to be 3, that Bueno Silva was just noticeably gassed. Looked like she had given up on her stool, which like, I just hate to see out of fighters, and it always makes me second guess picking them like down the line. So give me Chiasson to get this one done by decision. I think striking is going to play the biggest factor with that reach advantage.
Yeah, this is a hard one for me. I think going back to the Atlantic City main card, like a striker against a girl who's like mostly a grappler, and Bueno Silva, I'm like scarred from that fight, and I lost a good amount of money off of Blanchfield losing that one. But I think Bueno Silva is more battle tested, so I think that makes me favor her a little bit more when I'm thinking about it. But at the same time, like you said, that reach advantage is going to come into play. Only a 3-round fight, I think, always benefits the strikers. And Chiasson's not bad. She has a couple submissions on the ground, definitely not at Bueno Silva's level. And I think the body build of Bueno Silva definitely provides an advantage. She's more, better center of gravity for on the ground grappling. So I'm gonna go Bueno Silva, but Ryan, I agree. I don't think this is as clear cut as the line says. I don't think she should be a 2-1 favorite here. And I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking again and you're right here.
Yeah, Ryan, I agree with you, man. I lost a little bit of confidence in Bueno Silva. And this line to me, like you just mentioned, Luke, I like the juice here with the underdog. I like the reach advantage. I mean, she fought Pennington back in 2021. So 3 years ago, that was their common opponent. But I don't know, man. Just something about the underdog here. I think it's going to go to decision. I think it's going to be 29-28. But ultimately, I think Macy gets it done.
Yeah, it's just like it's always one of those things that it's on the fight, right? Because you see it. It's just what are the judges feeling?
Yeah, we'll know early. Be like, how are they? What are the vibes tonight with the judges?
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. It's just like, shit. Okay, we're in for one, fellas. I guess we'll find out.
Seems to be in a weird split, like a 30-27 for Bueno Silva, and then like 2 29-28 for Macy. And we're like, what the hell, man?
Can we sit here and talk about women's bantamweight for a little bit? Not a little bit, but just a quick second. Like,
absolutely.
What is going on?
What you got?
If you want to.
How is Juliana Pena not fought in like 3 years?
She's still waiting for
she's waiting for Nunez.
Like I'm just looking at like, how is Raquel Pennington still the champ? Like, how is no one gone for that title again? I don't know what's going on there. So hopefully Macy wins this just to switch it up. Maybe just give her the title fight because Juliana Pena's on a 6-year vacation. But at the end of it's one of those where, the GOAT leaves and the kingdom falls apart. Like, I don't know what's going on.
Luckily, we have Kayla Harrison, who just made her name in April, giving some life to that division. So we'll see what happens.
But she's not lined up for anything right now, right?
No, she had an injury.
Is that what it is?
Damn.
Apparently, her coach was saying that no one wants to fight her. I have no idea.
I wouldn't be surprised about that either. Like, who would want to fight her?
Yeah, after she just destroyed Holly Holm. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to them giving Kayla Harrison the title. And then you also have Amanda Nunes murmuring about coming out of retirement to get that belt back. So, it's just one of those weird things where it's like no one really has earned a title shot. they kind of just had to make one, throw one together after Nunez retired, and then Juliana Penny refuses to fight anyone but Amanda Nunez, who would be the clear #1 title contender, but she's just laid dormant. So it is one of those tricky divisions where there's just nothing really lined up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think obviously they got to give it to Kayla, right? Like that just makes the most sense. Kayla's going to win, and then Amanda Nunes comes back. They've been hinting at it for a couple of months now that she might come back. Well, the might is not for Juliana Pena. It's to fight Kayla Harrison in a mega fight. And that's a fight that could headline a card, a pay-per-view.
Oh, yeah. I agree
Maybe
100%.
right now the only women's fight that could headline a pay-per-view card right now.
Yeah.
I mean, Grasso, Shevchenko can, for sure. But
yeah. I mean, I agree with you. That just seems like it makes too much sense. But of course, Kayla's got to win the belt first. Yep. All right, let's move on, gentlemen. Anthony Lionheart Smith, a fan favorite on this podcast, plus 125 versus Roman Dolidze at minus 150. I'm surprised at this line, given that Dolidze's taking this on like 8 days' notice. Lionheart, 15-11 in the UFC, a veteran. That's a lot of losses, though. I mean, come on. And he is coming off a win, though, via guillotine of Vitor Petrino. However, he's only won 2 of his last 5, and he's talking a lot about the guy who's fighting later on this card, Alex Pereira. Like, Alex doesn't want to see me. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, you won 2 of your last 5, so maybe get this one done first. And Dolidze, 6-3 in the UFC, lost his last 2 via decision to Nasruddin Imavov and Marvin Vettori. Guys, does Lionheart get it done and talk shit to Alex Pereira after this fight?
Yeah, I mean, Anthony Smith blew one of my parlays back on UFC 301, so I'm still not too happy about that. So I kind of want to shit talk him. And while I do think Dolidze has fought, I mean, he has the best win as of recent out of both fighters, beating Hermansson. But I will say Anthony Smith did look good on his feet that last fight before he locked in that guillotine. And while Dolidze does hold a power advantage, I'll go with Lionheart.
Yeah, I'm taking Lionheart. I mean, Dolidze's 185er stepping up, fighting 20 pounds heavier at 205. Clear advantage there on Smith's part. And it's like one of those weird things where like Anthony Smith is like nothing for nothing. He is a good fighter. Went to a decision with John Jones. That can't be understated. Got it done against Petrino in the first round, threw him into a guillotine. It's one of those things where like the veteran just has some of those more like crafty moves that he could pull out of his pocket just because he's seen everything. So like there's nothing that Dolidze will throw at him that he hasn't seen before with all that experience in the octagon, especially fighting a guy who fights 20 pounds lower than he does normally. And I kind of get the whole chirping Alex Pereira. I think, like, call me crazy. I think that would be one of Pereira's toughest fights at 205, just because there's that possibility that a guy with the grappling that Lionheart has just taking him to the ground and just showing him something new.
Lionheart is chinny, though. And if you want to put in the combo of being chinny with Pereira's left hook, I think he gets slept really quickly.
Absolutely. I know. I agree with that. But it's just also Lionheart's one of those guys that sticks to his game plan, which like I think I've said here before. It's like these guys that face Pereira almost never stick to like the clear path to victory. And they're just like, fuck it, I'm gonna throw at this dude. And then they all find out. I don't know. I mean, like, and especially at his age, when you're looking for a title, you have to be calling up higher. You have to be looking and just shouting out and screaming bullshit, even if you don't deserve it on paper or whatever, blah, blah, blah. If he can rack up those wins, it eventually does get him back in the title fight contention. And at his age, where he's pretty close to retirement, I think Lionheart's like 36, 37, getting up there. You just have to spew nonsense onto the mic until it works.
Yeah, Ryan, I'm definitely with you. I definitely think a win here puts him in, not in, contention, but he's notoriously known for taking short notice fights. And the trend of the UFC right now has been canceled bouts or guys stepping in, guys stepping out last minute. So I could totally see him getting this dub, and then something happens down the line. I don't know. After Pereira wins tonight, I don't know who's next or, who gets hurt. So I could see him getting that fight. Zach, what you said, I do think he's chinny. I don't think that there's really any path to victory in a 5-rounder because we saw Alex's gas tank against Jan Blachowicz at like yes, he got taken down and he was dominated on the ground, really didn't do anything, but he got back up and Blachowicz was gassed in the later rounds. I think that fight was in Utah or somewhere where there was high elevation. But at the same time, I don't think that anyone right now is beating Alex Pereira just to begin with. But I do have Lionheart here. I think the jump for Roman is just too much. I think the power at 205 is substantially more than the power at 185. I don't see him catching him, and in every other aspect, I think Lionheart's a little bit better. I think this ends up being a UD. I don't think Lionheart gets a knockout here, but I definitely am riding with Lionheart. I think he's a slight underdog. I think this is a great parlay piece, and I think he does have a little bit of steam. I mean, the loss to Khalil Roundtree was bad, but Khalil Roundtree's like people are talking about him being next up for the belt. So I definitely think Lionheart gets this done. I think the jump in weight is just too much on short notice. Obviously, you're not cutting as much, but you're not used to getting hit by a 205er, and you're not used to, taking shots and giving shots at 205. So I got Lionheart here.
And also, circling back to Roundtree, did he piss hot? Was it right after that fight?
It was he was preparing for his Jamal Hill fight, and he took a taint supplement, and he reported it himself. I mean, his suspension's very light, just because like he didn't piss. He was, I guess maybe he pissed hot, but then they tested his supplements and they found that he was using like these third-party test things, and then contaminated supplement. You don't get it too much flack for that, especially because it wasn't intentional. So I think we'll probably see Roundtree back before the end of the year,
unless you're Ryan Garcia.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Lionheart here, guys. For me, it's just the veteran experience in the octagon versus Roman, who this is only his second appearance on a pay-per-view card, paired with the going up weight, paired with I get they're both on short notice, but he's got a shorter notice. I'm surprised that Lionheart is a slight dog here, to be honest with you. And I'm not a big fan of his, but I hate to say it. I think he gets it done here by decision. But maybe he submits him, 2 in a row via guillotine. That'd be pretty cool. But yeah, I think Lionheart gets it done. And although I'm not a big fan of him, I am looking forward to his post-fight press conference with Joe Rogan if he does get it done.
Yeah. And going back to Luke's point, I know Luke mentioned, he's a company man. He takes these fights on short notice. He's done it multiple times throughout his career. And I think, even especially at his age, you've seen that work with like a few fighters. Like Sean Strickland's like the one I'd like to note, where takes a short notice fight with a Imavov on 2 weeks notice, and then fights a Boost Magomedov, unranked guy, and then is then fighting for a title. So for him, taking this fight, I feel like it just makes perfect sense. If Anthony Smith really does believe what he says about, Alex Pereira, I'll beat the shit out of him, take him to the ground, whatever, do whatever, submit him. This is the path that he has to take in his career to get to that title shot or get back in the title shot contention. And as we've seen, the UFC favors those guys that are able to step up on short notice, win fights, and ultimately, if something were to fall through in a later Alex Pereira title fight, you best believe that Anthony Smith might be one of those guys that they call first.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that you mentioned he's a company man. He's on the broadcasts. He's up there on the analyst desk, like Dustin Poirier will be this weekend. Mr. Obvious, Anthony Lionheart Smith. If Pereira didn't have his left hook, he wouldn't be that good. Well, no shit. That's what makes him that good.
Speaking of Poirier, I hate that. I don't like that he's on the broadcast desk now. He's been talking about retirement, and now I see he's going to be on the analyst desk. I'm thinking, God damn, this really might have been it.
Yeah, I was curious when I saw that. I was like, they announced it this week, I believe, like 2 days ago, and they were like, yeah, Dustin Poirier will be on. I was like, yeah, it's interesting. I like it. I wonder if he's doing it like you mentioned, Ryan, for retirement, and I wonder if he would have still done it if it was like Connor Chandler, because he would have been just talking shit the whole time, like because he did post that meme where like the 2 kids on his lap and it was Chandler.
Like Happy Father's Day.
Yeah.
And this is also like right after Poirier went out and said I went toe to toe with the best. I'm happy with what I did. And then he's
That's
like,
right.
That doesn't mean I'm retiring, but I don't know.
Yeah, he did have that Instagram post of him fighting Makhachev all bloody up. He's like, fought the best of the best. It's like, is that cryptic? It might be.
Seems a little bit.
Oh, can we bet on Poirier to retire Saturday? I kind of want to sprinkle on it now. You guys got that thought in my head. That's a good little parlay piece. Dustin Poirier to retire. The
Yeah,
analyst
anytime
desk.
retirement announcement.
Let's parlay that with Alex by knockout. It'd be a good night. All
That
right.
has some juice to it.
Co-main event, Brian Ortega plus 120 versus Diego Lopez minus 142. Ortega 8-3 in the UFC. His losses to Max and Volkanovski for titles and to Yair Rodriguez, which he avenged in his last fight via an arm triangle. Lopez 3-2 in the UFC, but despite the slow start, he has won 3 in a row. Won via knockout against Sodiq Yusuff back in April on the previous Pereira card. That was a really fun fight. That was in the first round. That's what really got his hype train going. Lopez, as the favorite in this one, had me a little bit surprised. Do you guys agree with the betting lines?
Yeah, I have this one kind of as a toss-up. It's a major step up in competition for your boy Diego here, Ryan. And it's weird looking at this fight because Ortega is extremely durable, so I don't see Diego putting him away. But I think the 3-rounder does favor Diego, as I do think he's the better striker. I can see Ortega maybe being able to rack up some control time and winning a round, but I have Lopez winning this one via decision.
Yeah, give me Lopez by first round knockout. Until I see otherwise, I'm not taking anything less from this dude. I hold Diego Lopez in such high regard, taking that Evloev fight on short notice. We got to watch him live, and I think especially being there, you could see that there was something special in the kid. Taking that on 6 days notice, going to a decision, throwing up those wicked submissions off his back, had him in an arm bar, had him in a knee bar, and then I think with 10 seconds left, he locked up a triangle choke, which I don't know. I've been watching that fight back with the Boyev. I was just like, damn, maybe if he threw that up 30 seconds left in the round and was able to get that fight could have played out differently. It's just one of those things where you see a guy come up and rise and just dismantle all these dudes on his way to the top. Has wicked power for division. I mean, he's huge for 145. You could see it. Towers over pretty much all of his opponents. Has that power. Gets up into a clinch with Sadiq Yusuff, knocks him out in the first round. Walk-off submission, which you never see against Gavin Tucker. And then Pat Sabatini, first round KO. Like I said, I think until I see otherwise, or I see him lose or get KO'd, I think I'm just going to take this dude by first round finish every single time until something else happens. I don't know. I ride high on Lopez here.
Yeah, I'm with you, Ryan. I'm going with Lopez here. I like Brian Ortega. I think he looked great in his return from injury in the last Yair fight. I just think that Lopez is a high speed train that you don't want to get in front of right now. I think he's on a roll. I don't see Brian Ortega stopping him. Also, Brian Ortega was talking about, I want to move up to lightweight. It's not normally what you talk about when you're kind of the next guy up for a title shot. Definitely, arguably, a title eliminator fight here. I think obviously we have to see what plays out with Max and Ilya, and then obviously Volk in the mix. But I think Diego Lopez is kind of 1 or 2 fights away from stepping in there against Max, Volk, or Ilya, and I don't see Brian Ortega stopping him here. I'm not gonna argue against people who do take Ortega here. I think that's a good play too. There's plenty of fights where he's not gonna win this one, and then he somehow sneaks in some crazy submission and wins it. One of the best jiu-jitsu guys in the game right now. But I think Lopez is, just like you said, Rye, just as good in jiu-jitsu. Definitely better on the feet. I have him. And he also, he's younger. So I have him here. I don't think he's going to finish him. I do think it's going to go to decision just because Brian Ortega is pretty tough and no one really finishes him. So that's where I'm going to differ from you, Rye.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'll go ahead, Ryan.
It's one of these weird things because I thought when I watched Ortega fight Yair in their second bout, Yair dropped him in the first, and I just think that if Lopez is able to do that, packing the heavier punches, he gets him out of there, and that's ultimately why I have him going first round. But other than that, if he doesn't do that, I think he gets it done by decision.
Yeah, I don't think Lopez is going to knock out Ortega here. People just don't finish him. I think he's got an iron chin. He's got the big fight experience. He's fought the best of the best in this division, outside of the champ. But yeah, honestly, I love Brian Ortega here. The dogs are barking for me, man. I'm on a lot of underdogs. I do think he gets it done by decision. I think it's a really exciting fight. I think it's a really fun fight. But I don't see either fighter getting a finish in this one. But yeah, give me Brian Ortega, man. Imagine how different his career would have been if Volkanovski just knew how to tap out, because that was absolutely nuts.
Yep.
All right, guys. Let's go to the main events. Alex Pereira, -155. The UFC golden child right now outside of Conor McGregor. Versus Jiri Prochazka, +130. This is the second time these gentlemen have fought. Pereira 7-1 in the UFC, including 3-1 in title fights. Obviously, the one lost to Izzy after he beat Izzy for the belts. He did knock out Jamal Hill in April after a little cup shot, and he goes, no, Herb, no, I'm good. And then boom, knockout. That was to retain his light heavyweight belts. And then obviously he beat Jiri via knockout back in November. Jiri is 4-1 in the UFC, knocked out Alexander Rakic on the Pereira Hill card back in April. So same time off for these gentlemen. He's looking to avenge his only loss. And I thought something interesting that Max Holloway said. He actually picked Jiri in this one. It's like Jiri has just been training. He did his little darkness retreats for 3 days while Pereira's been all over the place. We saw the video of Pereira in the car. He's like, oh, yeah, I'm fighting like in a month and 4 weeks. And they're like, damn, dude, you're absolutely nuts. Yeah, I don't put much merit into that, like maybe Max does. But I'm curious your guys' thoughts here.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this one. I think some people seem to forget that Jiri did take round 1 in their first fight, and it seemed like he was winning round 2 until Payton put him away. And I am a bit nervous about the circumstances of this fight. But with all that being said, it only takes one left hook from Pereira to end it, and I have him finishing Jiri and getting out of there, still holding that belt.
Yeah, I really haven't made a decision about this fight until just now, so I think I'm just gonna lock it in. I think I'm gonna take Jiri in this one.
Whoa!
Yeah, I think there's a part of me that's just like, I look back, Jiri hadn't fought for a year and a half until he fought Pereira for the belt. So you could argue the argument there is for just ring rust, coming off a horrible shoulder injury. And outside of the leg kicks, it's like Jiri had his moments. He's a very difficult fighter to gauge because he fights so awkwardly. And then after that Rakic fight, where he was just eating shots left and right, it looked like he had finally, I'm back in here. He got his groove back, beats Rakic. And I think that with the takedown in the first round that Jiri got in their first fight, I see Jiri fighting this game, using a different style of game plan and just like ultimately trying to get Pereira to the ground. More worried about the power now than he might not have been in their first fight. I think he just implements a lot more grappling into this one and tries to wear him out. I don't think he gets it done by sub, but I could definitely see, if Alex Pereira doesn't knock him out at any point in this fight, Jiri winning by decision.
Yeah, my biggest thing, Tong, and you kind of alluded to it with the darkness retreat versus the touring around, all of Europe, all of the US, doing like shows and stuff for Alex. He said he's been training the whole time. And to take a fight on 4 weeks notice as the champ to replace Conor McGregor, what he's done, not just replace Conor McGregor, but fill in for huge cards. I think Alex knows that he can handle this fight every time. I think that's the only reason you do that. I think, like you said, Rye, he was kind of tested in that first round, and his stamina was there. And Rakic won that first round against Jiri as well. I just think that the left hand and the power that Alex Pereira has is so like astronomically more than anyone else in that division, maybe in the UFC. And I think that he believes in that, and I think his coaches believe in that, and I think Jiri low-key believes in that because he's talking about all this voodoo shit in the fucking press conferences leading up to this fight about like
Can we
how
talk about that? Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like
Take
I know
your spirits
Jiri.
away, Alex.
I know Yuri's like he's got that in him. He's like kind of an oddball, and I respect that about him. I think it plays into how good he is in the ring or in the octagon. But at the same time, like, for you to be saying this stuff when you like got knocked out, and then like he was after the fight, he was like, "Oh, I was out," and then he was like, "Oh, I wasn't out." It's kind of giving me the Jamal Hill vibes now, when Jamal's like, "Oh, you didn't knock me out cold." Like, okay, guys, like you still went down. We're gonna get finished either way. And I just don't think anyone right now. I think you're kind of crazy to bet against Alex Pereira on this run he's on. And I think it opens the door if he wins. Maybe that Tom Aspinall jump up. I just can't see another guy stepping in who Alex has already beaten. I don't think Yuri's as good as Izzy in terms of preparation and change a game plan. I just don't think he has the answer. I think it's an early knockout within the first 3 rounds, and I think it even goes cleaner than the first fight.
I mean, look, I
Damn.
hope so. It's just like one of those things where I just take into account. It's like, okay, you fought this guy once, you lost, you got KO'd. And I guess what I'm worried about mainly is like, what does Yuri do to switch up the game plan?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like one of those. It's like if Yuri goes in the same way that he went into the first fight, then yeah, Alex starches him
Yeah.
in
Also,
the 3 rounds.
thinking about what you're saying right now, Ryan, it's not like he has a full camp to prepare with a game plan as well. I mean, I know he's probably been thinking about that Alex TKO since it happened, but it's not like he has a full 12 weeks to sit there and game plan for Alex either.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. But I guess my counter argument to that is we know what Alex has been doing. We've seen him world tour, going to Australia, traveling the United States. We don't know what Yuri's been doing. He's just been dormant this entire time. And he's been looking to get back to that title. So like the only thing I could imagine is that Yuri's just been back in the gym, just training, getting ready for the next one because he wants that title fight back. He wants the belt back. So I think when a guy gets to that point where he had the belt, had to vacate it because of injury, comes back, gets knocked out, goes into UFC 300 on a camp, fights, gets a knockout, knows after that win that he's right there for a title shot. You have to imagine, especially when Jamal Hill loses, you have to imagine that he's just been in the gym. You know, neither guy was expecting this fight, but especially because it's on short notice. But I think that when it comes to it, I think Yuri has been in the gym, just training, just ready. You know what I mean? Like just waiting for his shot at the belt again. While you know that Alex has been on the world tour, it's just one of those things that scares me. So
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I
I
said,
agree
I
with
was
that.
torn. I was torn going into this one. I would not like. I think Alex probably will get it done. He's fought the guy before. He's beaten before. But I would not be surprised if Yuri's able to pull this off. And I think that's why I'm taking Yuri.
Actually, what do you guys think Yuri would do outside of training? Like swing
Nothing.
samurai swords on the top of a mountain? Like I actually can't think of what else that guy would be doing.
Yeah, it's just,
Like actually outside of the gym, like what do you think he does? He's like just an
He
interesting
just
dude.
met. No, he goes to the
just
gym for 8 hours and he meditates for 6 hours and he goes to bed.
Yeah, dude.
screams at the sky. Like,
I have to agree with Luke here. I think you're crazy for. Well, I don't know if you're betting against Alex, Ryan, but I do think you're crazy for going against Alex with the run that he's on. I don't think Yuri stylistically matches up very well. Like he's kind of got a little bit of a wide open kind of style. He didn't look very good against Rakic in the first round. I remember we were watching here and I told Jirok, I was like, trust me, dude, Yuri's going to get it done. He's going to knock him out. I know he lost round one, but we never thought he was going to win via decision. Like he's going to knock him out. And ultimately he did. And I like Yuri. I like the way he fights. I like his mentality. And I agree with you. I wonder if he does go with a different approach here. But at the end of the day, I don't think it fucking matters. Alex Pereira is that dude, man. I just think he's that dude. Initially, I wasn't the biggest fan of his because I liked Izzy and he was just kryptonite. And obviously, we saw 281. I lost, a couple bucks on on Adesanya, and I was not too happy about it. But goddamn, dude, at this point, if you don't like Alex Pereira, something's wrong with you. The whole
oh yeah,
Chama, the way he fights, the rivalries he already has in his short amount of time in the UFC. Give me Alex Pereira knockout in round 3. All right,
Love it. Is
boys.
it time to move on to some parlays?
Yeah, let's build some parlays, boys. Come on. We're gonna do the classic, the safe play and the long shot play, because that's what we like to do here. Zach, you could start us off. Who you going with in your safe play?
Yeah, to start with the safe way, I'm going to go with Ricky Simon. Don't need much else said.
there's one of
Right.
you going to elaborate on that, but
No,
I mean, we
he
talked
already
about it
said his
earlier.
piece. He said his
Yeah,
piece.
yeah.
We talked about it
Yeah.
earlier. Like, if I can go back and repeat what I said, but I like him to win the fight. I think he UDs him, proven vet, and going up against a guy taking a massive step up in competition. I see him avenging his recent loss streak and getting the job done there.
Yeah, moving on. I'm taking Payton Talbott inside the distance, KO, TKO, or submission. the line's this big for a reason, and I don't see any reason why this fight goes to the judges. Payton Talbott won't let it.
Notice he didn't say first round, guys. He said within the distance.
Yeah, within the distance. KO, TKO, or submission. He gets it done by finish.
That is only minus 220 for a minus 2,500 money line. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I'm going Joe Pyfer. I think that he gets it done here. I think his fight is right into his game plan, and I think that his power is just going to overwhelm Marc-Andre. We're going to take him money line, minus 320.
I mentioned it earlier. My most confident pick, Martin Buday. I am fading the 45-year-old man that's lost 3 fights in a row. As simple as that. Minus 265. Parlay those 4 plus 268 on the safe play, which is our juiciest safe play to date so far. All right, guys. What about the long shot? Zach, what is your leg?
Yeah, to set up the long shot, I'm going to go with Anthony Lionheart-Smith. Like we talked about earlier, Jalide taking this fight on such short notice and going up a weight class. Smith, the company man, gets the job done just so he can get on the mic and start calling out Alex Pereira some more.
Company man. He's in the union for the UFC.
Yeah.
Ryan, what you got?
Like I said earlier, give me MVP money line. Like I said before, I think he gets it done. I think he just outpoints Ian Gary to a decision victory.
Yep. And then third leg for me, I'm taking Alex Pereira by KO or TKO. As we said before, don't get in the way of fast-moving trains. That's what Alex Pereira is right now. He is going to win this. I think if you're getting really risky, you do a little, I think you do like the round combo. I would take 1, 2, or 3 TKO, KO for Alex Pereira. But Alex Pereira by KO or TKO throughout the whole fight, plus 115.
I'm going to go Brian Ortega money line plus 118 right now. Yeah, I mentioned it earlier, man. He's battle tested. He's got a chin. I know there's a lot of hype with Diego. You guys mentioned it. We were split on that one. We were kind of split on Ian Gary MVP too, but we're going to have to be all together as a team when we actually sit down and watch these fights and root for the parlay. So with Smith, Ortega, Pereira by knockouts, MVP. It is a full main event parlay, and the odds are plus 2,166 currently. That's a nice payday, gentlemen.
The juice is loose on that one.
The juice is loose, man.
We have yet to hit a long shot parlay. Hopefully this is the first card.
Yeah, it's a little bit less crazy than the first one we did. We did like method of victory, but we did hit 2 out of 4 as a squad, which is, not bad. If we took them all straight, we would have made some money, but we didn't take them straight.
Yeah, I need to find a way to pay off my credit card bill, so hopefully we can smack this.
Aren't we all, Zach? Aren't we all? All right, guys, that wraps up the UFC 303 prediction podcast. We appreciate you guys sticking with us. We'll have the recap coming out early next week.